Hi there, and welcome to Cannons Point Preserve. My name is Tyler Jones, and I work for the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. My colleague and I, Meghan Angelina, are here in a canoe, and we're taking a look at something very unique. It's called a living shoreline. Meghan, do you want to tell them a little bit about what a living shoreline is and what they do?
Yeah, so a living shoreline is a shoreline stabilization approach to mimic natural shoreline dynamics and to control or reduce for erosion. So before this living shoreline was constructed, it was an eroded bank. So imagine a bank that was very steep and had a lot of its sediment washed away. So heavy machinery came in, graded the slope here, and natural materials such as native vegetation and oyster shell within bags were placed here on the shoreline to mimic natural shoreline dynamics. So living shorelines allow for the connectivity between this water environment and the upland environment. So this is good for any wildlife trying to access the water, any runoff that might be running off of the bank. So instead of its alternate, a hardened shoreline such as a bulkhead or riprap, it allows for this connection between the ecosystems.
That's pretty cool. So this is unlike like a seawall or something heavy duty like that I would see. Maybe it's a little more soft approach. Is that about right?
That's right. Yeah, we call it a green versus gray approach sometimes, a hardened versus a soft approach.
Well, we can hear the birds like it.
Yes, so living shorelines, one of the advantages is that it enhances habitats. So fish love this place because of the new oyster reef that has been recruited here. That's also protecting the shoreline. It allows for these fish to find prey, and the birds come to find fish.
So this living shoreline was built in 2015, if I'm right.
That's right. It was the fourth living shoreline constructed along our Georgia coast, and it's very accessible to the public.
It's the first one that was accessible to the public.
That's right.
Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it was a partnership between the St. Simon's Land Trust and DNR, right?
That's right. Yep.
So we're pulling up alongside here. So maybe you can tell us what we're seeing here. I actually even see some of those bags you were talking about right there.
Yes. So we are at low tide right now. So you can see a lot of these new oysters that have recruited or settled on top of the oyster shell within the bags. So as baby oysters or oyster spat are floating along, sensing for some kind of hard substrate to attach to, they found this oyster shell here at Cannons Point. So they attached and they grew to a near adult, and they've been building and building on top of each other, creating this reef and this natural wall, which further protects the shoreline from intense wave action and a lot of the storm activity that causes it.
So when these bags were put out, there were no living oyster shell. It was just oyster shell, right?
It was just the shell.
It came
That's
from
right.
restaurants, backyard oyster roast, things like that people recycled.
That's right. So we encourage that. We encourage recycling of oyster shell. If you have an oyster roast, we can reuse the oyster shell on projects like these that protect our coast and allow for more resilient coastal communities.
But now I can look here and see that these are live oysters here. So these are ones that have recruited and grown off of the bags, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay. Did you know that a single oyster can filter about 50 gallons of water a day?
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So think about how much fresh, clean water these oysters are making.
That's right. So any of that stormwater runoff that might have any kind of contamination in it, the oysters can clean that before it goes into our
Look at that.
oceans.
Look at these beautiful oysters.
You can see some barnacles on top of them too.
Uh-huh. Wow. Take a look. That's pretty cool.
So behind the oysters, you can see some native vegetation.
Is that what I'm looking at right up here?
That's what you're looking at. That's Spartina alterniflora. That's the dominant vegetation that we have here along the Georgia coast. It's tolerant of salt water, so it's placed where the water might come in contact with the shoreline. So behind that, we have some upland plants that are native to the coast.
Cool. Well, what do you say we let these folks take a closer look at the living shoreline here?
That sounds great.
Okay.